Hello, I did my hypothesis testing project comparing a sample of Skyline students that uses reusable water bottles to the UK's population statistics of owning or using a reusable water bottle. Let's start off with some facts. A survey has shown that more than a fifth of people do not use a reusable water bottle, or they've lost it and never bothered to replace it. The UK uses 13 billion plastic bottles a year, and only 7.5 billion of those plastic bottles are recycled. I'm a huge advocate for environmental conservation, and I strongly believe that we humans play a huge role in destroying our Earth, and that's why our planet is drastically changing year after year. Plastic leads to destroying marine life and polluting our Earth. And when we're looking at UK statistics, only 55% of the UK population that was surveyed by Keep Britain Tidy environmental charity in 2018 said that they owned a reusable water bottle. That's a little over 50%. Moving on, as I said in the previous slide, 55% of UK's population surveyed said that they owned a reusable water bottle. The statistics given to me about Skyline samples shows a total of 140 students, and 111 of those students said yes to owning a reusable water bottle. The Skyline data was collected through random sampling by approaching random people to collect the data to prevent bias. Our goal for this project is to first compare the Skyline sample to the national claim, and two, to use the summary to compare this variable with the sexes at Skyline. We know that a total of 140 Skyline students were asked if they used a reusable water bottle in this study, and we're suspecting that it would be about 55% of the sample, but we wouldn't know unless we conduct a test. Before conducting the test, I was able to make a pie chart to get a rough idea of how my test was going to play out. From looking at the pie chart and our histogram, we could tell that the percentage of students that own a water bottle is way more than 55%. It shows us that about 79% of Skyline sample owns and uses a reusable water bottle, and only about 21% do not. To hypothesis test number 1, our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis is 0.55. We're trying to test if 55% of the Skyline sample uses reusable water bottles. Since our x is 11, our p-hat comes out to be 0.79. We need to know how likely it is in a sample of 140 that 55% of the students uses reusable water bottles from a population where 55% of the people use reusable water bottles. Through StatCrunch, I found Z to be 5.77-ish, and at a 0.05 level of significance, the critical value of Z is 1.645. Through conducting the hypothesis test, I've come to a conclusion that since our observed value of Z is greater than the critical value of Z, and our p-value is smaller than our 0.05 level of significance, we therefore will have to reject our null hypothesis. Our population is not 55% compared to the national claim, and it's significantly different. This is just a graph that visually shows how small our p-value was. After doing the test, we've determined that a possible type 1 error was committed. This was because we rejected our null hypothesis, which was 0.55, when it wasn't. This type of error would mean that this particular null hypothesis is actually true, and in our case, that would mean that the proportion of Skyline students using a reusable water bottle was actually 55%, and I failed to accept the null hypothesis. For our next test, we would be trying to compare the variable between females and males at Skyline. I made a pie chart for both female and male data retrieved. I accidentally cut off the percentage for the female data, but about 20% do not own a reusable water bottle, and about 80% of them do. And for the male data, 22% do not own a reusable water bottle, and 78% do. On to hypothesis number 2. Our HO is P1 equals P2, and our HA is P1 is less than P2, meaning that the proportion of male that uses reusable water bottles is less than females. I conducted this test at a significance level of 0.05. Our p-hats are 0.78 for males and 0.81 for females. Using StatCrunch, it showed me that Z is around negative 0.37, and we got a p-value of 0.37. In conclusion, since our p-value is greater than 0.05, we don't have sufficient evidence to reject HO and accept HA. Assuming that the population proportion of people that use reusable water bottles is 78%, the likelihood of obtaining a sample proportion of 81% happens 35% of the time. Therefore, we can say we don't have enough evidence to say the population proportion is less than 78%. We then can conclude that the male and female proportion of owning a reusable water bottle is equal and not significant. Here's just another graph that shows our p-value. After the proportion test, we have determined that a possible type 2 error was committed. This was because we failed to reject the null hypothesis that P1 is equal P2. This type of error would mean that this particular null is actually false and I failed to reject it. In our case, this means the proportion of females using reusable water bottles is actually not equivalent to the male proportion. This can be prevented by having like a bigger sample size to work with. Next, I found 95 confidence interval for hypothesis test number 1, where I came to the conclusion that I was 95% confident that the proportion of Skyline students that uses reusable water bottles falls within the confidence interval of 0.73 to 0.86. I also did it for hypothesis number 2, test number 2, and I came to a conclusion that I was 95% confident that the true difference of male Skyline students that use reusable water bottles compared to females falls within the confidence interval of negative 0.16 to 0.11. This last slide is just my conclusion of the whole project itself. To summarize, the Huffington Post UK claims that 55% of their population owns a reusable water bottle. Compared to our hypothesis tests, our student population had a drastic difference in the proportion of people that owned a reusable water bottle, which was at 79%. So we rejected our HO in our first test. In our second test, we had to reject HA. We concluded that the male and female proportion of owning a reusable water bottle is equal and not significant. Then through conducting a 95% confidence interval test, we were able to be 95% confident that the proportion of Skyline students that uses reusable water bottles falls within the confidence interval of 0.73 to 0.86, which is the lowest limit is still higher than the UK's 55%. We were also able to be 95% confident that the true difference of male Skyline students that uses reusable water bottles compared to the female falls within the confidence interval of negative 0.16 to 0.11. Both type 1 and type 2 errors could have occurred within my hypothesis test. I could have rejected a null that could have been true or failed to reject a null that's actually false. If I had a bigger sample to work with, it would probably lessen the chance of committing a type 2 error. Through this project, even though it was a sample size of only 140 students when looking at the Skyline population, I was so happy to hear that 79% of the students actually use a reusable water bottle. If you think about it, investing in a reusable water bottle helps our planet and it helps you save money in the long run. Owning a reusable water bottle is one of the best investments I've made for myself because I found myself to start drinking so much more water. This data gives me more of an idea of how environmentally conscious the younger generation is compared to the UK's whole population, and I'm so happy to hear that. And then the last slide is just my sources. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.